This will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase the beauty and the greatness of America, and we can't wait to welcome soccer fans from all over the globe.
For the first time in 32 years, the World Cup returns to North America. $60 billion in projected revenue, the most watched event in human history. This man helped build the last one. His name is Anish Adhikari. Anish came to Qatar in 2019 to work on stadium construction. He installed air conditioning systems at the Lusail Stadium, the venue where the 2022 World Cup final was played. He was promised a salary of 800 riyals a month. After deductions, he received 600, about $165. Anish survived. Not all of his colleagues did. Thousands of migrant workers died in Qatar before the World Cup, from the heat, from accidents, from causes listed officially as natural. And somewhere in Zurich, Switzerland, an organization counted its revenue, $7 billion from the Qatar World Cup, tax-free. This organization has no army, it controls no territory, it was never elected by anyone, and yet it tells sovereign governments what laws to pass, and walks away with billions while the cities that built the stadiums keep almost none of it. Its name is FIFA. In French, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. But this is not a story about football. This is a story about power, private power, unelected power, the kind that most people never see because it hides in plain sight, wrapped in the world's most popular game. Here is the paradox. The FIFA World Cup is watched by more people than any other event on Earth, more than the Olympics, more than any election. Roughly 4 billion people, half the planet, watch the 2022 tournament in Qatar. The organization that owns this event is classified under Swiss law as a non-profit association. Its official purpose, written into its own statutes, is to promote football for the benefit of humanity. And yet, for the 2026 World Cup in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, FIFA is on track to collect somewhere between $10 and $19 billion in a single tournament cycle, tax-free. Its president earns $6 million a year, salary and bonus, to run this charitable association. The cities hosting the games have spent hundreds of millions of public dollars preparing for a tournament from which they will keep almost none of the profits. So the question is not, is FIFA rich? The question is, how did a private Swiss association, one nobody voted for, one that answers to almost no one, become the most commercially powerful sports body in history? And what does it do with that power? That question is exactly what this channel is built to answer. Every episode of World in Fracture, we pick one actor, a country, a company, an infrastructure, an institution that holds more power than the world realizes. If that's the kind of question you want answered, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. To understand FIFA's power today, you need to go back to the beginning, and the beginning is surprisingly modest. On May 21, 1904, 7 national football associations met in a small office on the Rue Saint-Honoré in Paris. England, the country that invented the game, refused to join. They didn't think they needed a governing body for a sport they had created. They were wrong. England joined a year later. For the first 20 years, no money, no staff, no real authority. The turning point came in 1930 with the first World Cup in Uruguay. Football now had a global event, and global events generate revenue. Slowly, then rapidly, FIFA expanded. into Africa, Asia, Latin America, recruiting new member associations, each of which received one vote in the FIFA Congress. Today, FIFA has 211 member associations. The United Nations has 193 member states. FIFA is, by this measure, the largest international organization on the planet. Those 211 votes, each worth exactly the same, whether cast by Brazil or Bhutan, those 211 votes are what make FIFA's internal elections so consequential. Control the votes, and you control the organization. Control the organization, and you control the World Cup. Control the World Cup, and you control the money. Everything connects. For most of its history, FIFA was not particularly wealthy. That changed when television and then digital streaming transformed sport into a global entertainment industry. The 2010 World Cup in South Africa generated $2.2 billion in television rights alone. Qatar, $7 billion total. And 2026? FIFA's own conservative budget projects at least $11 billion. Independent economists put the real figure closer to $19 billion. Once ticketing, licensing, and commercial partnerships are fully counted. That last point deserves to be repeated. FIFA keeps all ticket revenue. Every dollar spent by every fan at every game goes to Zurich. What about the cities that built the stadiums? The ones that trained the security forces? The ones that absorbed years of disruption? They keep nothing from the gate. The financial architecture goes deeper than revenue. It is built on a legal structure located in Switzerland. FIFA is registered as a non-profit association, exempt from taxes on revenues generated through its stated charitable purpose. In practice, FIFA pays almost no Swiss federal tax on the billions it collects from the World Cup. Switzerland has consistently chosen to maintain the arrangement because FIFA and the 45 international sports bodies also headquartered there contribute an estimated 1 billion Swiss francs annually to the local economy. Switzerland has a financial interest in keeping FIFA comfortable. The Swiss structure is the first layer of FIFA's financial fortress. The second layer is more aggressive, and it operates in the host countries themselves. When a country bids to host the FIFA World Cup, it signs a contract. These agreements are typically kept secret. FIFA requires confidentiality as a standard condition. But through freedom of information requests, leaks, and persistent investigative journalism, parts of these contracts have become public. And what they reveal is a pattern, consistent across every tournament, every decade, every continent. Legal analysts have called it the Lex FIFA, FIFA's law, the private rulebook that sovereign governments agree to follow in exchange for the privilege of hosting a football tournament. Brazil, 2014. The federal government passed a package of legislation called the World Cup Law Pack, granting FIFA and its commercial partners full tax exemptions unavailable to any other business operating in Brazil. Local companies continued to pay taxes. FIFA did not. The government agreed to spend $11.3 billion in preparation. Between 250,000 and 1.5 million Brazilians were displaced from their homes to make way for new infrastructure, many receiving compensation worth only 20 to 40% of their property's value. South Africa, 2010. The government installed 56 special courts across the 9 host cities, tribunals designed to process any legal issue touching the World Cup with exceptional speed. A parallel justice system built for FIFA. Canada, 2026, a country not normally known for yielding to outside pressure, and yet, confidential documents obtained by Canadian journalists showed that Toronto's original cost estimate for hosting World Cup matches was $30 to $45 million. Once FIFA's full requirements became clear, the real cost rose to at least $380 million. Vancouver's budget went from $240 million to a projected $620 million. Among FIFA's demands, tax exemptions for a 10-year period, full government assumption of all security costs, exclusive control over stadium naming rights, and blackout periods prohibiting other major events, including, in Montreal's case, the Canadian Formula One Grand Prix and the Montreal Jazz Festival. Montreal refused. Quebec's government sent FIFA a letter. The demands were, in their words, out of the question. Quick question before we go further. This series looks at organizations that exercise power no one formally gave them. Next up, BlackRock, the Gulf Sovereign Funds, Glencore, the commodity trader that has operated in war zones and collapsed economies for decades. Which one should we investigate next? Tell us in the comments. If there is one moment that forced the world to look at FIFA differently, it is the morning of May 27, 2015.
Earlier today, Swiss authorities in Zurich arrested 7 of the defendants charged in this indictment, including the current president of CONCACAF.
But the arrests were not the revelation, they were the symptom. Swiss police entered the Bourg au Lac Hotel in Zurich and arrested 7 senior FIFA officials on a request from the United States Department of Justice. The charges: racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering. 14 people were indicted in total. Dozens of millions of dollars in bribes had changed hands over more than 2 decades. At the center of it was Sepp Blatter, FIFA's president from 1998 to 2015. Swiss courts eventually cleared him of the most serious charges. He said years later, and I quote, "The courts have spoken. I remain untouchable." But the FIFA Gate revealed something more important than individual corruption. It revealed the structural conditions that made that corruption not just possible, but predictable. A private organization registered in a jurisdiction with minimal oversight, an asset worth tens of billions, and a voting system of 211 associations, many of them financially dependent on FIFA's goodwill. Why? Because FIFA grants each member association $2 million annually in development funding, negligible in wealthy nations, decisive in smaller ones. That dependency is very difficult to vote against. This is the architecture of control, not through force, not through law, through money and loyalty, maintained across 211 relationships, year after year. In 2016, Blatter was replaced by Gianni Infantino, who ran on a reform platform and promised transparency and accountability. What followed was, in certain respects, a continuation of the same structural logic, with a new set of political relationships. FIFA has deepened its ties with Gulf states. Saudi Aramco has joined Coca-Cola and Adidas as a principal FIFA sponsor, and the 2034 World Cup has been awarded to Saudi Arabia. The U.S. market, which hosts 78 of the 104 matches in 2026, represents more than 80% of FIFA's total income for this cycle. What connects these relationships is a consistent logic. FIFA aligns itself with whoever controls the market it needs next. It is not ideological, it is commercial. And nowhere is this commercial logic more visible or more contentious than in what happened to the price of a ticket to the 2026 World Cup. For the first time in the history of the tournament, FIFA introduced dynamic pricing, adjusting ticket costs in real time according to demand. The most expensive ticket for the final was listed on FIFA's own platform at $32,970. At peak demand, 4 final tickets briefly appeared on the resale market at $2.3 million each. American lawmakers wrote to Infantino describing FIFA's pricing as opaque and potentially deceptive. A coalition of European fan groups filed a formal complaint with the European Commission, arguing that FIFA, which holds a monopoly on World Cup tickets, had used that monopoly to impose conditions that would be illegal in a competitive market. Infantino's response, at an industry conference in Beverly Hills, was to laugh and to promise personally to deliver a hot dog to anyone who paid more than $1 million for a seat. And there lies the central contradiction FIFA has never resolved. It says it exists to make football universal. Its commercial decisions consistently make football more exclusive. Anish Adhikari, the Nepali worker who helped build the Lusail Stadium, testified publicly against FIFA before international human rights organizations. He is still owed wages he was promised. He cannot afford a ticket to the 2026 World Cup. FIFA today is richer and more powerful than at any point in its 121-year history. 211 members, revenues most governments would envy. Its president travels the world with the access of a head of state, and it remains a non-profit association, registered in Zurich, answerable primarily to itself. Are there efforts underway to change this? United Nations human rights processes are developing frameworks that could impose accountability on international sports bodies. Lawsuits by workers and fan groups are moving through courts in Switzerland and North America. These processes are slow. Their outcomes are uncertain. What is not uncertain is what FIFA represents as a model. It is not simply a football organization that became wealthy. It is a demonstration, 121 years in the making, of how a private organization can accumulate authority that rivals elected governments. That model did not begin with FIFA, and it will not end with FIFA. As this series continues, through BlackRock, through the Gulf sovereign funds, through the commodity traders and the city-states that move capital without fanfare, we will keep returning to the same question. When private organizations accumulate power that rivals states, who holds them accountable? And what happens when the answer is almost no one? That question drives every episode of World in Fracture. If this episode made you think differently about FIFA, our previous episode might do the same thing for the Vatican. Not a story about religion, a story about power. How an entity with no army, no economy, and fewer than 900 citizens maintains embassies in 183 countries and mediates between superpowers. Same question as today, different answer entirely. It's on your screen right now. Watch it next. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. And in the comments, which institution should we investigate next? We're just getting started.